Hey, welcome everybody to today's live stream. My name is Aaron Magnan. You might remember me from some past live streams. I haven't been on for quite a while, and actually, if you were expecting Jason, I have to apologize that he's not able to make it today. He absolutely loves doing these things. Unfortunately, I think he probably the best way to put it is he had a family emergency, so he wasn't able to be here today. So what I'm going to be doing is showing you some background information and some details about the update that dropped last night. So there's a lot of really great stuff that's in there. Um, so I'm the guy who's usually answering questions on the keyboard. Someone's saying there's an echo. Hopefully that's not the case. I'm not. Let me know if there's any problems. I'm watching the chat a little bit. We got this new low lag, low latency thing that we're using, so that's what I'm using to monitor if there's any problems. But anyway, what I was saying is I'm usually the guy behind the keys answering questions, but today Bryce is actually answering questions and I'm in front of the screen, so I'm remembering how to do this, so everyone hopefully take it easy on me. But I have a lot of great info to show you, so I'm going to just jump right into it. So I'm going to go ahead and show my screen, and maybe you guys saw that there, but in the lower left-hand corner, I'll just hit some more keys here and just hit F or whatever for fillet. But in the lower left, we're using that input overlay. Unfortunately, the same tool that Brad uses on his PC doesn't work on my Mac, so I'm trying a different tool. Let me know what you guys think about it. It's just helpful to let you guys see, what we're actually selecting as we're going around and clicking on things and using keyboard shortcuts, like my favorite S, as you see there. It popped up so we could see it, as well as like if you hit Command J, it's going to show you Command J. So or Control J if you're using a PC for those in position joints that we're going to be using. So anyway, the probably the first thing I should show you is actually not even in Fusion. It's actually on the update that the Kaching showed us yesterday on the blog. And the first thing that I wanted to bring to your attention is that we are leaving the Mac App Store. This is important. So if you have installed from the Mac App Store, you'll want to go through this transition guide to make sure that you actually get on and install from a different location. The main reason I think why we're doing this is that the updates are delayed because of the Mac App Store processes that go behind that sort of thing. So because they're delayed, we would get a lot of questions. We get a lot of people saying, "Hey, I'm not seeing these updates that you're talking about," and so now we're actually kind of trying to move people away from that. We're trying to get people to install from a different location. That's going to help ensure that everyone's using the same install at the same time, which is very beneficial. And actually, the transition guide, if you click that link, it's going to walk you through every little step of it. So pay attention to that what's new. While I'm there, let me show you how to get to the what's new very easily. Easiest way to do it is right from your help in the upper right-hand corner of Fusion. What you can do here is you can find the what's new, just click that. It'll take you to the latest blog article that Kaching has written, and he does a really fine job on that. So if you're not reading those, make sure you do check those out because in like the videos that I posted yesterday, we don't cover everything. In fact, I missed a couple things, and there's actually a couple corrections I wanted to talk about today as well. So let's just get right into it. And okay, so with this keycaster that I'm using, the thing that helps you see what I'm pressing on my keyboard, unfortunately I can't go full screen, so it annoys me quite a lot. Let me know what you think about it. It could just be me being crazy. But anyway, so the first thing is really low-hanging fruit I can show you is the new measure option. I hit I on my keyboard to bring up my inspect or measure button. With this new option we have in here, we can use a secondary unit system. I get a lot of people, get a lot of comments, saying, why don't you use millimeters all the time? Well, now we can actually show millimeters and inches at the same time without really, any issue of what we're showing, at least in the measure dialog. So it's important to keep that in mind. We can now see the millimeters as well as the primary unit in this design, which is actually inches. So I apologize for all of you metric lovers out there. So actually, I'm going to get right into the correction that I was referring to. The first correction that I have, and I'm kind of waiting to see if maybe they push like a hot fix to correct this, but the thing that I showed in the video where you right click and you're able to break multiple links at once if you control or shift select a number of different items, there should be a break link in here. For whatever reason, it did not make the update yesterday. Unfortunately, it did make my video. It's a little hard to go back and change that. So, I mean, I can either pull that video down and replace it with a new video with a correction, but those are little minor details that you don't necessarily care to hear about maybe, but it's important for me to kind of talk about what happened there and why it might have happened. So actually to cover a little bit about why it made the video but not the update actually is just the way that we access these pre-release fusions. So if you look at like my quick access bar down here at the bottom, actually I don't know what they call it. I was a PC user for many years before I got on this Mac, but down here you can see basically the shortcuts, and so you can see I have a dev build here in the brackets, and that's that's a build of Fusion that is two months out, maybe a month out or something like that. In addition to that, I have a staging build, which is the stuff that's going to get pushed to the commercial publicly available code that everyone is using out there. And then in addition, I have this, the one that I'm using right now because the update's pushed. I'm able to use, Fusion as everyone else out there is using now. So what happened there the break all links is in the dev code, but it actually didn't make the staging code, and so there's a little miscommunication. So I did want to apologize about that. Make sure that you're aware of that. I'm kind of waiting to see if we actually push a hotfix to get this corrected before I go and change anything about the video. Next up is the trash thing as well. So, and my fingers are crossed right now. I'm hoping that when I go and access this, I'm going to click the icon here. It's going to go and open up Fusion Team, and here I have it here. I'm just going to refresh it real quick actually. This actually I was told is getting pushed like any second now, so it's not actually there right now, unfortunately, but what you will see once this code pushes to the web, it happens a little bit differently than how we push code to the software. You'll see a trash folder here, so if you delete files that you need to go back and restore, then you'll be able to go to Fusion Team like I accessed it by clicking the project name, and then go through and actually find and restore any lost files that maybe you accidentally deleted or wanted to bring back for whatever reason that might be. Back into Fusion, let's get back to some of these other updates. I'm going to go ahead and close my data panel there, and I'm going to use a keyboard shortcut here just to show off my little keycaster. So Option Command P or Alt Control P on a PC is going to hide and show that data panel. So that's a nice little way to get to that real quick. But the next thing I want to do is just jump into this file here, and this file I used to demonstrate a really cool, really important update actually, and that's in terms of how you create a plane along a path. So there were some new options added to this to help you, capture your full design intent that was actually a little bit more difficult previously. So I've already actually gone about and done this in the traditional way and actually the new way as well. And let me just show you real quick what I'm talking about. And if you already watched the video, this is going to be a little bit of a review. It's not all like this. I have new files to show and I have some new things to show as well. Originally, if you wanted to offset this plane, 1 inch into that path, you would actually, you'd have to go in and like measure the path and then like figure out the proportional distance. So like in this case, 1 inch is 15.6% of the length of that path that I'm putting this on. So right now it's good, right? But what if that path changes? What if the length goes to 15 or goes to 20 or something? All of a sudden that 15% is a lot larger than 1 inch, right? So now we actually have this ability to add a physical dimension to this, and so all you need to do is in that path along plane along path command, you just need to change the distance type from proportional to physical. I mean, proportional still has its areas where it's going to be very beneficial. You want it at the very end, you want it at the very beginning, whatever that might be, or if you want it in the halfway along the distance. But with this, you're going to be able to start and stop those features at precisely the right location, no matter what happens to the length of the path. And so as I change this from 5 to 10 or 10 to 15, you can see that proportional one just keeps moving further and further away from that 1-inch location, which is not my intended design intent. So that's really, really good to see that we've added that new capability. And I'm not seeing YouTube anymore because I opened Fusion Team on my other screen there. Next up, again, this is a little bit of a replay file that I'm using here, but I have a video to support, what I'm actually going to be demonstrating here. But what we have some really fantastic mesh handling capabilities, and one of the ways that we're able to convert meshes to solids or BREP bodies is to use, our mesh sectioning tools and then converting those into sketch entities and things like that. With the tab UI, it made it really kind of difficult to get to this command that I'm referring to, that I'm alluding to. And I'm going to try to play a video here, and hopefully it works over the cast. But essentially, you would have had to go and created a sketch, placed it on the plane, gone into the sketch menu, and then found these mesh entity creation. So this create mesh section is what it used to be called. And so that was a little bit of a process that isn't really it's not very intuitive. It's hard to find. It's like buried in there 20 clicks later. But now we've actually moved that. So if you go to under the create, under the solid tab in the new UI, and actually I'm going to make sure to comment on that because we always get questions on that. But it's now in the solid tab on the UI at the very bottom, create mesh section sketch. So we changed the name a little bit. We added a little bit more detail to the name, and we've made it way more accessible. So we can just select the mesh, and there we go. We've started to create this, and we can adjust the angle. We can adjust how we're creating this mesh section, but in a very short amount of time with using this, we'll be able to actually create a very nice BREP body from an otherwise very difficult to work with mesh file. So great improvement there. Definitely like seeing that updated. Let's go ahead and I'm just blazing through these files here. The next one actually okay. Let me touch on the new UI. Just I reminded myself there. If your UI doesn't look like this, if you don't see surface and things like this, if you don't see like your workspaces look quite like mine, that's because I am taking advantage of this UI preview. So all you need to do to be able to take advantage of the UI preview is jump into your preview section in your settings, and here you'll find this UI preview. This is the way that Fusion is eventually going to go in. We're just vetting it out, make sure everything's nice and clean and ready to go before we actually roll it out wider. Make sure to take advantage of this. I think it's pretty well vetted at this point. There were some times where it was missing some features that I would have liked to see, but I think it's pretty on point at this juncture. Anyway, next up is a little bit of bonus, something that wasn't covered in the video, and this is related to projected entities and when they're lost, and how to fix it and how to find them and how to hide them as well. There's some new functionality there. So here I have just like a real simple body here, and I just needed something easy to work with. And I have a sketch plane up here just so I can kind of put it out in space, and so it's very easy to see what I'm doing here. But essentially all I want to do is create a sketch and place it onto that plane that I offset from the surface there. And then now I'm going to hit P on my keyboard to project, and you can see my little thing down there helping you understand what buttons I'm pressing. And so maybe I'll project like this guy, and I'll project this line, and I'll click OK. So all's good and well, all's great right now. But if I were to go back in time and maybe I actually wanted to add a fillet here, and again I'm using F on my keyboard to access my fillet tool very quickly. If I start to preview it, you'll see it's starting to show me this, and again, this is just one of these things that is kind of tough to discover, but is very important to know that if you start to preview your fillet, as I've done by clicking and dragging the arrow there, if I want to add additional entities, I need to hit Command or Control depending on your OS, and so I'll add that third fillet to the other edge there that I had projected. Once I click OK, and because I've done this now in history before that sketch, as I move it forward, you can see I've caused some issues here. The I mean, in fact, it did a really good job of compensating for the rectangle on the left, but in the instance on the right where that edge was completely lost, it wasn't a matter of like the shape changing or the size changing. It's actually lost that projection. And to get details on what's lost and understand what might have changed about the design that caused those entities and those projections to get lost, what you can do is just right click the sketch with the warning and the history, click review warning, and just like that it's going to show us the projection that might be causing us this issue. It's even going to give us a nice, really cool phantom display of where that edge once was. And in this case it's really simple to understand, but in other cases it can get very, very, very difficult to understand where your projection was lost and why it might have been lost. So this is super handy to be able to visualize this in this way. What I can do now is I can go back to the sketch, I can edit it. It's still highlighting to me the projection that's lost with that yellow coloration in the sketch. I can do something here. I can like hide projected geometries, and in one way that could solve all my problems because I don't see the errors anymore. But in fact, I'd like to fix this probably, so I can actually come through here and I can either like delete this or break the link or do some other things there, or I could reproject something that would make sense, like this same edge is essentially in the exact same location. So there we go, I've just reprojected something there. So real quick and great little addition there, and I did show that other piece real quick, but it's important to highlight that actually, that show projected geometries. This is brand new. You can turn that on and off to clear and show those, hide and show those things depending on what you're doing, and to make your sketch a little bit more manageable. So some great stuff there. So this is, let me come back to that one, DXF import. So Generative saw a lot of really cool updates in this release. Probably one that's going to be super handy for me is that I'll now be able to like share my generative results with other people on my team. So like Bryce, for instance, who's online answering your questions, if he wanted to see my results before this last update, he would have had to go and like resolve the thing that took me, whatever, 2 hours to solve this morning. And that is just, not the greatest, and something that we definitely wanted to fix and resolve. And so what we did is we've now enabled that and made that easier to be able to collaborate. So if Bryce were to log in, open up this file, go to the Generative Explorer results, he would see the same stuff. So here you're seeing just these examples, and here we'll change some of these displays, and here you can see there's a tech preview there. That's representing this completely new manufacturing method that we're going to be highlighting in just a moment here. But some great stuff there. Great to see updates in the generative side of things. In this case, I'm in generative again. I'm editing a model in the generative workspace, and what I wanted to do was I wanted to create some connectors. And so here I'll just select this connector obstacle. This is super handy in that it's really simple to define where connectors are, and connectors are typically always going to be something that you want to avoid, right? So they're going to automatically want to be obstacles. Here I'm creating a bolt with a head on both sides, so it's going to be able to enable me to kind of represent where this bolt would need to go, and maybe I want to consider where the tool needs to access this on the front and back of this, so I can click and drag these things very easily. And just like that, if I click this and finish editing the model, you can see it's automatically added that connector to this obstacle geometry designation. So that's areas of this design space that I want to avoid having any geometry as I go and generate this model. Now, what changed about this is that a lot of people were trying to use that and then pattern those. And so in this case, I have a bunch of different areas where this bolt would want to go, right? So here I can just I'll hit S on my keyboard and search for rectangular pattern and find it in this list here. I'm going to select body as my pattern tool, and what used to happen when people were using this is that it wouldn't automatically treat these new patterned or copied bolts as obstacles. So in this new release, it's going to automatically do that for us. I'm going to just key in some values here, 300 for that distance and 150 here, negative 150. Always pay attention to that. And obviously in this direction, I probably only want 2. And actually, while I'm here, I did want to highlight, and the reason why I made it like this is to highlight that, whenever using these rectangular patterns or circular patterns or whatever it might be, you always have these toggles in each one of these, and hopefully everyone knows that if you click to deselect one of those, it's just going to clear that one particular entity, because a lot of times you have things like, rectangular patterns where you want all of them but one, like in this case, or you have circular patterns where you want all of them but except for like the front 2 or something like that. So use those toggles to your advantage. It's going to enable you to create these very quickly and easily. As I finish editing the model there, what I wanted to see and what we're seeing here is that they're all painted in that red coloration, indicating that these are all obstacles, right? So that's super handy to be able to take advantage of, to be able to use that as we go and create more generative studies. This is a pretty flat-looking design space, right? And you might have actually seen this already, but one thing that we did in this release is we added this 2-axis cutting, and this is incredible. In the just considering how fast we were able to add yet another manufacturing restraint for this generative design technology. 2-axis cutting is going to enable us to, or anyone with like a water jet, a laser, or plasma, to begin to start to use this generative information in these generative design studies to actually really optimize those things and lightweight your designs and cut the amount of material used for any one of these things. So, and that keyboard shortcut that you see there is how I switch in OBS to my screen. So don't pay any attention to that one. What you want to pay attention to in this 2-axis cutting is what direction you're cutting from. And so in this case, obviously with everything kind of being in that Z orientation, I've selected Z as my cutting direction, so make sure to pay attention to that. To be able to access this is still in preview at this moment, so again, I was alluding to this a second ago, but in preferences, you might have seen this as I was showing you the UI preview. 2-axis cutting is accessible down here. This is a preview at this point, so go ahead and turn that on, give it a shot, and see what you can come up with using this tool. So let's close that. And here is actually, I did this morning. The unfortunate thing with using staging and dev builds is that sometimes the files don't come over. So all the work that I had put into, like in the video that you saw, was I was unable to bring it over to this tool, unfortunately. So this morning I really quickly tried to create a generative study that was, somewhat compelling and nice looking. But here you can see the generative results. This thing actually didn't converge, unfortunately. So that's something that I would have refined a little bit and tried to get better results. But what you'll notice about this is that when you export these generative designs from the 2-axis setup, it doesn't create a T-spline body, right? Like that doesn't make any sense. Why would you need a T-spline body if you're using like a sheet metal design style? So instead, it actually creates a nice looking little sketch here. So if I go and edit the sketch, you can see it's using CV splines to like connect a lot of these points because it creates a lot of very curved looking stuff. What's great about these is that we can reuse these, we can edit them, we can do all kinds of things to kind of refine them and make them better, make it easier to manufacture, maybe get less curvature because might build produce it a little bit faster, a little bit less expensive. But anyway, what I wanted to show you here is that I can actually go and I can take this and I can export this to DXF, and this is just a little, this isn't new, but this is something that I rediscovered recently. But if you're in a sketch or if you wanted to export to DXF, you can right click a sketch and select save as DXF, put it on your desktop, and I'll just name it test. That's what I always name things. But what's neat is that when you go and you import DXFs now, so I'm going to go and insert DXF or an AutoCAD file or wherever these files might be coming from. Fusion 360 is doing a much better job of working with those splines, and as you saw, like that was basically all splines inside of that sketch that I was showing you that the generative design tool came up with. So if I go and open this DXF, it's going to convert the splines into actually editable CV splines again. So when you go out to DXF, you might lose a little bit of that spline information, or you might lose the ability to edit it. But now with the most recent changes to Fusion 360, it's actually going to reconvert those into editable CV splines. So this works with AutoCAD files, and this works with DXFs as I'm illustrating here. So you can see there's control points in there to select and move around and take advantage of. So pretty handy to use, important to know about, and like I say, it took me a couple minutes to remember where that export to DXF was, but it's one of those things that if you don't use it every day, you kind of forget these things, and that's why I always use that S key shortcut to search for things, right? Okay, so the last thing is just mind-blowingly awesome. This thing I think is just incredible. When you export, so this is another generative design that's been exported. Obviously, I couldn't design that in 10,000 years if I had that much time. But in this case, this was generated with more of the traditional, well, traditional in the sense of generative, but the additive or the milling restraints potentially. But in this case, obviously, in the history, there's a T-spline body that makes the editing of these things much easier. But what I wanted to show you is that after you export these things to Fusion 360, or get the design out of the generative, you can go and create additional simulations. And so all you need to do is jump into the simulation workspace to do this, obviously. And if you had exported this from your generative design tool, it's going to recognize that, and it's going to want to bring over all that information into a new static stress study, which is incredible, because a lot of times you want to go and like vet it for other things and test other failure criterion or other things like that. But once it's done importing that information, it has everything. It has every single load case that I created inside of the generative design tool. It has every single load that goes along with each load case. It has constraints, obviously, and it even brings over the material that was associated with that particular generative study that you ran and then exported for whatever reason you chose it. So incredibly useful. What's awesome about this is that you can go and run different design studies, right? If I were to solve this, I would expect the factor of safety to be at whatever I defined inside of my generative design tool. So I'm not too concerned with static stress, but it has this very thin piece down here, and maybe that's a reason to be concerned for buckling or something. Maybe it would buckle there. Maybe I want to do a frequency study to figure out what the resonant frequencies are for something like this. So real quick, we can go and we can clone the study, and this isn't necessarily new. This is just something I like to make sure that everyone knows about. We can go into the manage details here, and we can change the study type to those modal frequency. We can go and we can clone it again, and we can create that buckling study, and just like that, we're going to be ready to go and solve these and figure out how it reacts under all these different loading situations and how it reacts with these different failure criterion in mind. So super handy. It's amazing that it's able to like translate back and forth. I think. I mean, I guess in like a couple weeks I'll just forget all about this amazing update and just expect that to always be there. But thrilled to actually see that be implemented so quickly. Here's one that I solved, and what I want to point out to you is that the factor of safety is not always going to be exactly right at 2. And in the instance here, that's because there's this very, very fine singularity that's happening here. And so that's causing these results to be somewhat skewed. If we look at the factor of safety plot, you can see the minimum is saying 0.19. Well, that's not really true in this case. If we go and we like filter out the singularity areas, those very small areas where there's those very high stresses, and it's just a mathematical problem that all FEA really has. And somehow generative design is able to work past that and It must have some internal algorithms to ignore certain areas or something like that. But um, what you can do as a designer is you can ignore those very fine stress areas that are caused by singularities, and if you look into more detail here, you'll see the actual factor safety is right at that defined location of 2. So incredible stuff. Some really great updates. Like I say, there's some things that didn't make it that um, I'm waiting to see if they get pushed in a hot fix, and hopefully that if it does come, it's going to come very quickly. The trash is one of those things. The break multiple links is another one of those things. So just pay attention to that. That's all I had to show for today. I want to thank everyone for coming. This was kind of scraped together last minute, unfortunately, because Jason was unable to make it today, but he will be back on Thursday. He's got another great tutorial to show you. If you like this, give it a thumbs up. If you have other questions, Bryce is online to help you out. And thanks, Bryce, for answering the questions on the chat. And thanks everyone. Keep fusioning.